HURE.com, or click the link in our show notes. Sure, sound extraordinary. And by The Old Mill Press, publishing beautifully crafted books that illuminate our world. To learn more, visit theoldmillpress.com. And by listeners like you.
Hello, this is Disney legend Bill Farmer, and you're listening to Skull Rock Podcast.
Skull Rock Podcast, where you hear the stories behind the adventures. With your hosts, Aljon Go and Dave Bossert.
Welcome to Skull Rock Podcast, the show about all things Disney and pop culture. Every week we take you behind the scenes of some of your favorite Disney films, theme park attractions, performances, books, music, as well as what's streaming, what's in theaters, and what's going on in this universe of entertainment. I'm Aljon Go, longtime Disney, Marvel, and Star Wars fan, pop culturist extraordinaire, and you can email me, Aljon at skullrockpodcast.com. That's Aljon, A-L-J-O-N, at skullrockpodcast.com.
And I'm Dave Bossert. I'm an artist, filmmaker, and author. And welcome to the Skull Rock Podcast. If you love Disney and pop culture, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And also now on YouTube. You can also like and follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can also email me at dave@skullrockpodcast.com. Aljon, we've got so much stuff to talk about. This is show 199, folks. Whoa. 199.
Wow.
I know, it's crazy. And we've got part 3 of our conversation with veteran animator Mark Kausler, who is absolutely terrific. And, you know, once again, Aljon, I think it's important to just remind our listeners that when we get guests on, we don't rush through the interviews. Mm-hmm. You know, we're not trying to jam the person's career into, 40 minutes or something like that. We're wanting to have a nice conversation. You know, we did a 6-part interview with Ron Clemens. We've done, 5-part interviews with Dave Spafford. We've done multiple interviews with Don Hahn and other fantastic guests that we've had on this show. So I just want to remind our listeners, we take our time. We're asking questions. We want to hear the stories, and we don't want to rush through it, right?
Absolutely. That's the fun part about it. Wherever the interview goes is wherever it goes. Wherever their questions and answers take us, that's where we go. And that's the mark of a good and fun interview. Very informative, and everyone seems to be responding to it, and we enjoy it. And the guests love it too. So I'm happy for it.
Absolutely. So I think we should just dive into things right now because, frankly, we have a lot to go over.
We do. Do we have some listener feedback this week?
We do. And I'm not going to belabor it, but okay. I'll let you run our little intro music.
Okay. Skull Rock Podcast answers your email.
So, Aljon, last week I talked a little bit about the hanging corpse apparently being removed from the stretching room at the Haunted Mansion.
That's the rumor.
Yeah, so I got a Facebook note from a gentleman in Canada, Stan. Okay. He says, I was listening to this week's show and where you were talking about Disney removing the hanging man in the stretching room. He goes on to say, I have 2 thoughts on this. First, thankfully, I never had anyone in my family or close to me commit suicide by hanging themselves, but if I did, I'm not sure I would want to be reminded of it when I went to a Disney park, especially if it was a child, brother, parent, or other family member. Mm-hmm. And then he says, second is, it's really hard to see if you are not looking for it. I know my first few visits to the Haunted Mansion, it took me a few attempts before I could see it. Same goes for my wife. Now that I've seen it, I know what I'm looking for. So my guess is the average guest that is just visiting the park won't even see it or even be looking straight up at that time. But he goes on to say, but like I said in the first point, if that did happen This is the way this is written. I said in the first point, if they did happen to look up just then to see it, it could be hard on them. I can see Disney's point where, for the most part, in today's society, hanging is connected to suicide, and suicide simply isn't entertainment, nor should it be. That's Stan from Canada. Well, Stan and I had a little back and forth in our messages, and what I will say is that, if you are going to go on that train of thought, that it may bother somebody because they are reading into it that the corpse is hanging there because of a suicide, then maybe we shouldn't serve alcohol in restaurants or bars because it may trigger somebody who is a recovering alcoholic. Or if you're allergic to horses, maybe they shouldn't have horse-drawn carriages on Main Street at Disneyland. Or if you got hit by a bus, maybe we shouldn't have the buses on Main Street because that would be a trigger. You know what I mean? It's like you could fall down a rabbit hole with this kind of stuff, and I just don't buy into it. All I would say is that for more than 50 years, there was a hanging corpse at the top of the stretching room. There's no reason to take it out, you know?
Right.
And as I said last week, if it bothers you, don't look up. Okay. Yep. So I don't think we should belabor it.
There you go. And there it is. Feel free to send us the feedback via email. And you heard our emails at the top of the show. There's a link there. We'll make sure that those links work, as well as our link to a brand new YouTube page. I have to say that we've got show 200 looming next week. And Dave would like to give away some really cool things to our subscribers. Dave?
Yeah, no, we're gonna give away some books. We're gonna give away some new books that aren't even released yet.
What?
How's that?
What?
Yeah. We're gonna go for it.
That's awesome.
So I'm looking forward to that. And like I said, send us notes. We actually will read your notes, good, bad, or ugly. We'll read your notes on air. And I just feel like sometimes in society we go way overboard. They were canceling comedians for a while because they made jokes about something that some group felt, that's you're really sticking it to us. We're going to cancel you. We got to get beyond this cancel society, don't you think, Aljon?
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't, I feel the same way you do. If you don't like something, turn it off. Don't participate.
Yeah. And by the way, what a boring world it would be if we got rid of all, everything because somebody might be uncomfortable with it. That would be a boring world.
Well, and why even have R-rated movies on the Disney Plus platform? That's a very controversial thing as well. But we can go down that rabbit hole. But the one thing I will say is thank you for your feedback, because it allows us to have this discourse, to discuss things. And I do see your point, and it's a very valid point as well. So kudos to you. And let's keep the emails coming. And speaking of that, it's time for our picks of the week. Dave?
Well, you know what I went to see? I went to see Deadpool Wolverine in IMAX.
Wow.
And I got to tell you, this was a fantastic summer movie. Nice. Without question, it was hilarious and just absolutely well done. And just so our listeners know, Deadpool's peaceful existence comes crashing down when the Time Variance Authority recruits him to help safeguard the multiverse. He soon unites with his would-be pal, Wolverine, to complete the mission and save his world from an existential threat. Just a fantastic film. Ryan Reynolds is obviously Deadpool. Leslie Uggams plays Blind Al.
I love Leslie Uggams. So fun.
Yeah. And Hugh Jackman is Wolverine. Emma Corrin plays Cassandra Nova.
Yes.
Just a great cast of characters. Honestly, there were all kinds of cameos in this movie. Jennifer Garner, Matthew McFadden, if you remember him from he's in Succession.
That's right.
Cameos by so many people in here. Wesley Snipes, I hadn't seen him on screen in a long time.
Whoa.
Chris Evans.
I think we're spoiling the film. We're spoiling the film.
Oh, am I? Are those spoilers? Okay.
We're in spoiler territory. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
Okay.
Spoilers.
Anyway, this was a fantastic movie, but I want our listeners to understand something. This is an R-rated film, and the profanities are just throughout the entire film. So if you're offended by F-bombs and, other really crude language, this may not be for you. So I'm just, giving you fair warning. That said, it was absolutely hilarious. And not only that, they're breaking the fourth wall and talking to the audience here and there. They're making fun out of Disney. They're making fun out of Marvel. They're poking fun at themselves. And that to me made it so much more entertaining. And I can't tell you how many times, Aljon, but there were just laugh out loud moments where you just burst out laughing. And so this was a thoroughly enjoyable film. The other thing I noticed when I went, because I saw this in an IMAX theater at my local local multiplex, and the thing I would say is it felt the theater. Not only the theater I was in, which, typically when I go see a film in IMAX, it might be 10 or 20% full at the screenings I go to. But I went to a noon screening on Saturday. I would say 3/4 of the theater was filled. Right? The IMAX screen. So they're paying a premium price for that.
Yes.
Right? But not only that, the multiplex itself was buzzing with people. It felt like pre-pandemic at the movies. And not everybody was seeing Deadpool and Wolverine. There were families going to see Inside Out 2. There were other movies playing at the multiplex, and people were out to see the movies. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it was because we're having 100-degree weather and people want to just go sit in a cool theater. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But this certainly was a very entertaining summer film. I highly recommend it. Again, just be aware it's R-rated. It's not for children.
Oh no.
And there were people in the theater with young children.
Oh boy.
And I kind of wince at that because this is not a film for, children.
It's super violent, Dave. It's super violent.
It's not only super violent, but I mean, it is just, lots of innuendo, lots of, like I said, profanity. I mean, the language is just throughout, you wouldn't believe that this was, basically a Disney film, Disney Marvel
film. Yeah. Well, this
anyway.
is the first one. Well, we'll have more, Deadpool and Wolverine news for sure because of Comic-Con that was this week. But let's move on to the rest of the stuff. Yeah.
On the small screen, I actually rewatched Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1 last week. What a fantastic movie that is.
Yeah.
I'm glad I saw that in IMAX when it first came out. But again, seeing it on a 65-inch television wasn't bad either.
Yeah.
I also have been watching a show called The Responders with Martin Freeman on Prime, Amazon Prime and BritBox. Really gritty, UK police drama. Martin Freeman is just a fantastic actor. And it's certainly worth seeing. I did watch a show that I have watched over the last several years. This is season 3 of a show called Grace. And it stars, hold on one second here while I get my notes up. Well, first off, it takes place in Brighton, England, and that's where my daughter went to school. And I visited her numerous times over the 3 years that she lived there, and so I know the city, right?
Yes.
And so that's appealing to me. But this is such a well done crime drama that takes place in Brighton, and Detective Superintendent Roy Grace is a hardworking police officer who has given his life to the job. And I can't tell you how well this this series has been written. It's just absolutely incredible. And I highly recommend this. I mean, it's based on Roy Grace novels by Peter James. Okay. And it stars John Sims as, Roy Grace, this police superintendent, detective superintendent. And his partner is an actor, a British actor named Richie Campbell, who is also really fantastic. I mean, just a really terrific series, well written, great. Each episode is a case, but there's also an overarching thread that's going through the season, and so it's fabulous. I highly recommend it. And then finally, on Hulu, I watched The Bear season 3. And The Bear season 3, if you've watched it, you know what I'm talking about. It's a fantastic show. It's one that if you like restaurants and eating out at restaurants, this all revolves around a restaurant, and it's a great series. It stars Jeremy Allen White as Carmen, who's this sort of up and coming genius chef. The synopsis is: a young chef from the fine dining world comes home to Chicago to run his family's sandwich shop after a heartbreaking death in his family. A world away from what he's used to, Carmi must balance the soul-crushing realities of small business ownership with his strong-willed and recalcitrant kitchen staff and his strained family relationships, all while grappling with the impact of his brother's suicide as Carmi fights to transform both the shop and himself. He works alongside a rough, around the edges kitchen crew that ultimately reveals itself as a chosen family. Maddie Matheson, who's a well-known chef, plays a great character named Neil Fack. Joel McHale is in some of the episodes as a real SOB of a master chef. He really plays it to the hilt. Oliver Platt plays Uncle Jimmy, who's bankrolling this operation. It's just an absolutely wonderful show. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it. Go check it out. It's on Hulu. That's what I've been watching. Aljon, what have you been watching?
Before I get into that, this is the first time I've ever heard the term recalcitrant in terms of a description ever in a podcast, and I never thought I'd live to see the day where that word was going to be used in a podcast. So let me just say that. But The Bear sounds great. Actually, I've got that marked because of the cast is so amazing. So speaking about amazing, I will tell you that Cobra Kai. Dave, you recently binge watched Cobra Kai, and I finished the latest season. This is part 1, I think, of maybe 2 or 3 that they've decided to split, I believe, in several different installments throughout the year to kind of keep subscribers going. What a kind of cliffhanger, so to speak, for this particular series. Once again, it is visual nostalgia candy for everyone that loves the characters of Daniel LaRusso and Johnny, and You find out more about Mr. Miyagi. You find out more about the big Sekai Tekai tournament that all of the kids are being enrolled in to find out who is the best of the best. And you find out that John Kreese is back with Cobra Kai and kind of resurfacing like the serpent that he is, getting ready to strangle the life out of these kids and the dreams of their senseis. And I can't wait for the next season of Cobra Kai because ultimately it's about the story and the characters, and these are the characters that has lived in my heart and in my mind for the past 40 years plus. So I'm loving it, and I can't wait to see how it ties into the new Karate Kid film with Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio. I can't wait. I did see this is available, and by the way, Cobra Kai is on Netflix if you didn't know. Also available to rent on Amazon Prime is The Strangers, Chapter 1. Gang, you know that I'm a huge horror movie fan. And The Strangers is it's a trope, but it's also a series of films. The original one with Liv Tyler that was done maybe about 10, 12 years ago was really well done. A home invasion, a recently married couple takes a honeymoon into a cabin in the woods. And of course, the home invasion starts up and it doesn't let up. And the original film was so good on so many different levels. Jump scares, high drama, very high tension. The romantic couple gets in a tiff, and of course there's that friction there, and how it all kind of goes down, and how the couple kind of reconciles at the end before it's too late. And as horror movies go, this movie is basically a retread of that same film, except it's not as good. And it's a shame. I think they're looking to maybe make this some type of tentpole franchise for The Strangers. And as you know, Dave, too, films are all about the big setup and the big payoff at the end. And I believe that in their goal and quest to make this some type of series of films, like this is the first in the new trilogy of rebooted films for this potential franchise, they missed the mark, because I did not feel that there was a satisfying payoff at all. And that's the thing about having the final girl or the final person go head to head against this horrific person, this mad crazy killer, or killers as it were. There's no payoff, and that is so important in horror movies when you have these kind of things happen. So I was let down, and it's a shame. So I gave it a 6 out of 10. And normally films like this are at least a midline 7, like
Wow.
Saw or whatever, these types of movies. You have to be really excellent in order to go past a 7 for me, like a Thanksgiving or or like a Scream sequel, which they've done pretty well on. Halloween has been treading water, and that's unfortunate. So yeah, this falls below my expectation, and it's so sad. But anyway. There it is. There's my analysis from just a film fun guy. I'm not a filmmaker like Dave, but we try to have fun here on the show. Hey, send us those lists of films you want us to review and discussions. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll check it out in a future Skull Rock podcast.
Skull Rock Podcast. This week in Disney and pop culture.
Wow. Dave, it's Comic-Con weekend. And this big weekend has tons and tons of news coming from the House of Ideas, Marvel Studios. The grand plans for the next phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe have been unveiled, supersize-wise, by Mr. Kevin Feige. Hollywood Reporter shows off the fact that they revealed the Fantastic Four, some details about that, details about the Thunderbolts, but more importantly, they've decided to bring the big guns out for what will be an amazing 2026, 2027. It's just right around the corner, Dave. Robert Downey is back in the MCU.
I was shocked when I heard about this because, I thought after Iron Man and, the Tony Stark character, that Robert Downey Jr. was done with it all. But I'm thrilled that he's coming back.
We've talked about this, that Robert Downey Jr. looks back on his time with Marvel over, 10, 12 years of him playing Iron Man and being such an integral role, basically a locker room leader amongst the cast, how he fosters the relationships and the camaraderie on set, how it's just nothing but joy for him, that, you know, he didn't want to leave Marvel, but because Joe and Anthony Russo and then McFeely, who wrote the screenplay, McFeely's written, and the Russo brothers have written and directed 4 of the quintessential Marvel films: Captain America, Civil War, The Winter Soldier, Endgame, and of course Infinity War. They were so integral to that. To have them all back means that there's something special in particular about this film to bring Robert Downey Jr. back. And, he left to do Oppenheimer because he doubted himself after doing all these pop culture comic book films that he could actually act. And then when he kicked butt and he won, his Oscar, and then he decided to come back, bam, here he is back into the mix and making backing up the brink trucks for Disney to make an insane amount of money leading up to those films.
Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. And again, it's like your head explodes when they make all these announcements, because it's not just 1 or 2. It's just, so many things being announced. It's crazy.
And they limited it to like maybe 4 or 5 projects. And that was just enough. Just the taste, they're getting ready to film Fantastic Four. They brought the entire cast in to talk about the film and show the cast is there with the director, and they're getting ready to film in London right now. They brought the Thunderbolts team back out, and they had of course David Harbour, who plays the Red Guardian, comes out, and he's all dressed up, and he looks at the entire crowd, including Florence Pugh, and he goes, "You didn't get the memo? No one ever dressed up." Julia Louis-Dreyfus is looking at him like, "Well, Julia dressed up. I dressed up, and no one else dressed up." So, man, Marvel pulling out the stops. And of course, there's Harrison Ford and Anthony Mackie for Captain America, the next Captain America film that's coming out. And of course, what does Harrison Ford do? Looks like he is having the time of his life, and he hulks out. He pretends like he's hulking out, acting like the Red Hulk. And I love that, Dave. I mean, I'm telling you nothing that you don't already know. I mean, Harrison Ford.
I saw the trailer for the next Captain America movie.
Yeah, it looks good, doesn't it?
With Anthony Mackie. I mean, It looks fantastic.
They're pulling out all the stops. And I can tell you that I saw the entire Hall H stream from Comic-Con this morning, actually, before we record. And the look on my face, Dave, I visibly was smiling from ear to ear with all of these announcements, and I laughed out loud, and I was getting emotional about it because I've invested so much of my life into Marvel Comics. I love the character of Iron Man. It's my number 1 favorite superhero. And then to see Dr. Doom, probably the biggest bad guy of all. You know what they say, Dave, you've lasted long enough to be the hero to see yourself become the villain, right? And
there you go.
There it is, man. And 360, Robert Downey Jr. or the 180. It's amazing. Anyway, I could go on and on about it. But the other thing that's Marvel Studios is celebrating, Dave, you alluded to this because you saw Deadpool, is the fact that Deadpool is raking in the cash, Dave. How much cash has Deadpool raked in?
They're estimating that this is going to be 195 to 205 million box office for the opening weekend. I think it's going to go north of that. I haven't seen anything come through that is, saying what the actual box office is going to be, but it's going to be north of $200 million. That is phenomenal for an R-rated movie. I have to say that's pretty unprecedented. And there was, they were initially thinking this movie was going to open to, like 160 million, but it had a blowout Thursday previews of like 38 million. Friday, it did like a 90 something million haul for just Friday. So this movie's going to have legs for weeks. And would not be surprised if this is $1 billion movie for Marvel.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I believe that as of now, as you're right, it is the number 1 R-rated film of all time, actually, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it already surpassed $210 million as of this recording, and I guarantee you it's probably, as you said, north of that. It's probably going to be at least 250. I think by the end, the weekend returns come back, if not more, globally. So it's globally.
Look, if it does over 200 million domestically, I mean, globally, it's probably going to be, upwards of, another 150 to 200.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, for opening weekend. I mean, it's crazy.
It's going to be $1 billion film, but it's also easily. Having said that, Pixar's Inside Out becomes the #1 animated film of all time, according to the global box office. Dave, are you surprised at this number?
No surprise whatsoever, Aljon. This is another film that's going to continue to go, and it's going to be a long time, I think, before we see another $1 billion animated movie eclipse this one. I mean, we'll see another $1 billion animated film easily, but this one, I think, is going to have some legs and maybe run closer to $2 billion.
I feel that the next Super Mario Brothers movie will probably come close to this, just because the Super Mario Brothers movie did $1.3 billion at the box office. Frozen did 1.2. Incredibles did 1.2 as well. Minions did 1.1. Toy Story did just over 1. Despicable Me also did just over 1. And Finding Dory, a cool 1 billion, guys. 1 billion. So I think it's just about time. I mean, I have high hopes for Moana, but I don't think it can touch Inside Out 2. I just don't.
You know what? It's going to be interesting to see how that does, because I mean, the fact that it was being made as a TV show for Disney Plus, and now they retooled it for a feature. I don't know. I mean, again, I hope it does okay for them, but it's going to be interesting.
Sure will. Speaking of Disney, Disney Plus and Hulu and Max bundle streaming partnership launches. So it's out there in the ether right now. And then, of course, you can see the different tiers. The bundle will sell ad-supported versions for $17 a month and an ad-free version for $30. And of course, this bundle includes Disney Plus, Hulu, and Max, which will combine all of those Disney and Hulu services along with Warner Brothers Discovery Max. And that is insane, Dave. I never thought we'd see the day, at least with Disney and Warner Brothers would partner up, but here we are. Harry Potter.
I think it's fantastic, and I think this is a really great bundle. I mean, to get all of those services for $30, I mean, that's fantastic. No commercials.
No commercials. I think it's an amazing value. I know that I'm going to take advantage of this, which is great. And I don't care to see. I don't like seeing ads, but I will certainly sell it because I will certainly buy the ad-supported version for $17 a month. I mean, I'm already getting Hulu with ad stream, the commercials don't bother me. I'll take it and I'll support the brand. It's fine. Cool. Speaking of more Disney news, Disneyland workers reach a tentative contract agreement advertising immediate strike, averting the immediate strike threat, according to the Hollywood Reporter. Dave, 14,000 workers, including write-ops, candy makers, had voted to authorize a strike if an agreement could not be reached. We knew that this was going to have a lot of impact onto Disneyland because so many of their workers, of course, are being part of this union. What do you say about this news?
Well, I'm just glad they averted a strike. I mean, it would have been a disaster if the workers went on strike and they had to shut down the resort. Oof. I mean, just an absolute disaster. So I'm glad they averted it. I'm glad they're working things out. Let's move on. I mean, the Disney stock has been well oversold because of a lot of these cross currents, and I just hopefully in a couple of weeks when Disney reports its earnings, there'll be a bump for the stock. But boy, this is just an oversold stock that just needs to pop.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of things popping, Gina Carano and this Mandalorian lawsuit appears to be headed toward trial after a judge denies dismissal. Carano sued Disney earlier this year over her termination from the Disney Plus series and has backing from Elon Musk. And this, of course, has been very divisive. I feel that Disney should have settled out of it because I personally feel that she was targeted because she hasn't said anything that other Disney stars with Marvel and Lucasfilm involved have said far more controversial things. And, I'm not, not one to play the political landscape of whatever. I just feel that, for one person to go unharmed and untouched, and for other person to be let go, to me is a double standard, and I don't like that. I just feel like people should be treated fairly, and good for her. That's all I have to say about that.
Well, this is going to be an interesting case to watch, and it's going to be far reaching because I think that there's been a pattern of people being targeted for things that they've said on their social media or, whatever, have said outside of the company. And by the way, I could think of several, not just Gina Carano. There's other people, employees that, wouldn't be in the news that were targeted because of things they said on their Facebook page or something, which, by the way, wasn't terrible, but it was counter to the company.
Oh, sure.
Right. So if they're targeting people, that they're violating their First Amendment rights, and so it's going to be interesting to see how this particular lawsuit plays out. I'm interested in seeing, whether they settle or if it's going to go to trial. I would bet that Disney's not going to want this to go to trial.
Absolutely not.
Because it's going to open a can of worms.
It certainly will, because they're going to be called out for all the different stuff that they turned a blind eye to. And whereas they decided to target Gina Carano. And anyway.
And by the way, I really liked her character in The Mandalorian. I guess the ship has sailed. They're never going to bring her back. But boy, she was a terrific character.
It's a damn shame. She got along great with her castmates. Everybody seemed to like her, whether it was, Carl Weathers or, someone like a Pedro Pascal, that they found common ground and worked together really well alongside all the directors, Dallas Howard and, Taika Waititi and everybody seemed to get along really great. It is what it is. And it's a shame. This cancel culture's got to stop, people. That's all I got to say.
Absolutely. People are entitled to their opinions as long as, as long as you're not inciting, craziness. Right. If somebody has an opinion, respect their opinion and move on. You don't have to agree with it. Absolutely.
That's what we do in entertainment. I mean, there's a lot of entertainers I don't agree with, but I appreciate their work. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rings of Power released an epic season 2 trailer at Comic-Con. Wow, more news from Comic-Con, Dave. And I just love how the effects they're really starting to get so good with the visual effects, Dave. And you're an effects person. I mean, how good does this trailer look?
Oh my gosh. When I was watching this trailer, Aljon, I thought to myself, my God, 20 years ago or 25 years ago, this would be considered an epic theatrical release.
100%.
And here it is on a streaming channel. It's so spectacular looking. I have been one who's watched the Rings of Power of the first season. I'm looking forward to season 2. It's an epic television show that's just visually stunning.
That's amazing. Check out Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power on Prime. That is going to be super cool. So looking forward to that. Another thing I look forward to is the DC universe. James Gunn recently at the Comic-Con released a brand new logo, which shows the era of DC Comics. And in this new they've kind of went Marvel, okay? And James Gunn said that everything that the DC Studios is doing now is going to be all encompassing, whether it's comics, movies, video games, streaming platform, everything is going to be under the term Disney Studios. And one of those different projects is the Penguin. It brings a crime-ridden trailer.
Wait, you just said Disney Studios.
I mean, oh my gosh, DC Studios.
DC Studios. Come on.
Thank you, Dave. I've got Disney on the mind. DC Studios, yes, Detective Comics, DC Studios. Colin Farrell appeared virtually to talk up the spinoff to Matt Reeves' Batman, while the cast and executive producers worked the crowd into frenzy in person. And I tell you what, man, Colin Farrell looks really good as the Penguin, one of the most misunderstood villains in the Rogues Gallery of Batman. It looks really cool.
Look, I love the fact that this is a limited series. I watched this trailer. Look, if you like crime dramas, crime dramas and, almost noir type films, this is gangland, criminal organizations. It's gritty looking. Colin Farrell has just transformed himself into the Penguin. He's almost unrecognizable. I am so looking forward to seeing this show.
I am too. I was a big fan of how they portrayed the Penguin in the Gotham TV series.
Yeah.
I was really a big fan of that series, and this looks great. Colin Farrell's an amazing actor. Now, from one Disney galaxy and DC galaxy to a galaxy in Star Trek, I'm looking forward to this. Section 31 movie trailer starring Michelle Yeoh has been released. Paramount Plus dropped the long-awaited first look at the Discovery spinoff, which strives for a rebellious and contemporary tone focused on Yeoh's bad character. I had to bleep that out for our family. Michelle Yeoh, I've loved Michelle Yeoh and her career. She is just amazing, and what an amazing actress. But when she turns it up, man, and she plays a baddie, man, she can do it. She can do it well. This, of course, is a little bit of a spinoff from Star Trek Discovery, which, Dave, I know you watched a little bit of.
Yeah.
And so her character, Jojo, is joining a secret Black Ops division of Starfleet, and it's tasked with protecting the United Federation of Planets, but she also must face the sins of her past. Her character in a mirror universe was the Empress. She was a big bad of that series, Dave, and you probably know, maybe you've watched the show, but the teaser trailer really kind of explores that part of her character as being part of this Black Ops Section 31, trying to be undercover Black Ops.
Look, I love everything Star Trek. I love the Star Trek franchise. I'm a huge fan of Gene Roddenberry.
Yep.
I think he was a futurist, a genius futurist. And I watched this trailer and I thought, I got to watch this. And I love the fact that it's a movie that's dropping on Paramount Plus.
Yes.
That's what I loved about this. So looking forward to that.
I am down with that. Section 31, go back in your Star Trek lore and see how they screwed up the timelines. Go back in and check it out. Can't wait. Good Star Trek is always good for me. Check this out. So, Dave, you're a Bob Dylan fan.
I am.
And Timothy Chalamet transforms into Dylan in this complete unknown trailer. I hope I pronounced his name right. Of course,
Chalamet.
Chalamet. The Dune actor takes on the iconic singer in this first teaser for James Mangold's biopic. James Mangold is a prolific, filmmaker, and here we have another biopic of yet another rock and roll Hall of Famer legend, Bob Dylan. What do you think about this particular biopic?
I absolutely love this trailer. I thought Timothy Chalamet really transforms himself into Bob Dylan, and it just looks like a great biopic. Bob Dylan is I think a music icon. Who has had an incredibly prolific career, and was a voice of a generation. I mean, he really was the voice of the 1960s counterculture, Summer of Love, world, and also he was inspired by Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger and some of those folks. Singers that came before him, and I'm looking forward to seeing this biopic on a big screen.
This film stars Ed Norton as Pete Seeger, as you mentioned, Ellie Fanning as Sylvie Russo, Boyd Holbrook as Johnny Cash, Monica Barbaro as Joan Baez, Dan Fogler as Albert Grossman, and wow, the list goes on and on. Very cool. You have Bob Newirth and Scott McNairy as Woody Guthrie. This looks like it's got every one of those characters from that era and I'm looking forward to seeing it. And Dave, I can tell you this right now, looks to me like I'm going to be doing some product placement for this film.
Okay. I love that.
Can't wait for that. All right. This week in our regrets, we actually
Our
have
obituary roll call.
I know you wanted. I know you. We've been needing to do a voiceover for that. We'll do it. We'll do it. John Mayall, the tireless and influential British blues pioneer, dies at the age of 90. Of course, his band John Mayall and the Bluesbreakers, which he formed in the 60s, has counted Clapton and Fleetwood, Mick Fleetwood, of course, among its famous members. This is not a shock to all of us music fans, but it is a tragedy just because of how much he has contributed to the music scene. Of course, he passed away at the age of 90. Dave, what a career.
You know, he wasn't a household name to the average person, but in the music world, this guy was a legend. Mick Taylor, who played in the Rolling Stones for 4 or 5 years, was part of his band. I mean, he had a succession of incredible musicians come through and play with him over the years, and although he wasn't like a top number one Billboard artist, he was somebody who was very influential in the blues and rock and roll world.
Yeah, really brought that American blues style to British to the UK and in London, and really just made it happen and just influenced so many people. Of course, as you mentioned, he was a band leader, had everybody playing his band, all these tastemakers, and he said, quote, "I'm a band leader and I know what I want to play in my band. Who can be good friends of mine?" He said in an interview with Southern Vermont Review. It's definitely a family and a small kind of thing, really. And who knew how influential he would ultimately be? But once again, just a great and leaving behind an entire legacy and basically touching everyone who's ever heard his music. And it's still being heard to this day. John Mayall dies at 90. Great stuff.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. Now, gang, let's sit back and relax for part 3 of our amazing interview. Gang, I can't tell you... It's awesome that we have this interview with veteran animator Mark Kausler right here on Skull Rock Podcast.
Let's do it.
Skull Rock Podcast. Interview time.
Well, Aljon, we're back again for a 4th episode, visiting with our friend, animator, story artist, shorts director, Mark Kausler, who started in the animation business on the Yellow Submarine in 1968. Mark, welcome back to the Skull Rock Podcast.
Well, I'm very glad to be here. Thank you, Dave.
So,
hey, there's an audience again.
They always go nuts for our guests because we always have the best guests. Mark, last week we ended with talking about those the short films you made, mm-hmm. and I said that this week when we came back, I really wanted to talk about the fact that you have this voluminous film collection, and it is on film.
Most of it, yes.
Some of our listeners may not know is a long spool of acetate that has pictures on it that runs through a projector.
Yes.
Because everything's so digital today.
Sometimes nitrate, sometimes mylar, but mostly acetate.
But let me ask you this. How did you start collecting the films, and what kind of films do you look for and want to collect?
Oh, God. Well, I'm sticking, now that I'm retired, I don't spend the kind of money I used to spend collecting film, but I still look for little tiny areas, rarities, like some of the missing Fleischer cartoons. And there's at least a dozen Terry Toons, black and white ones that I've never seen. Mm-hmm. And I'm always looking for those. The problem with a lot of that stuff, because they did not make TV prints, they're extremely scarce. If you find a print, you consider yourself very fortunate. And a lot of time, those prints are on nitrate only. They got printed on 35 millimeter once in the 30s, and they were never reissued. Like look at all the black and white Mickeys. That's such an interesting story in that they made them and maybe put them out once or twice in theaters in the 30s.
Yeah.
And then they just kept making new ones. They didn't reissue the old ones so much. A lot of those did not get reissued until the Mickey Mouse Club from 1955.
Right.
It's so hard to fathom that. I was not aware of that until just recently. That, my gosh, all those years, the people didn't see. I thought the great Mickeys, which were the black and white ones, and some of the color. I love a picture called The Worm Turns. You asked films, my holy grail. The Worm Turns is a Mickey. I would love to find on film. It's sort of a science fiction story where Mickey invents a courage serum and sprays it on Pluto, who goes after Pete, who's the dog catcher. I love the staging in that. The animation is so loose, so cartoony. It's just a thrill for me to see that cartoon.
Which is kind of up your alley. I mean, that's the kind of animation you like to do.
Yeah. Well, like Freddie Moore's stuff to me was so inspiring. There's a Woody Woodpecker he did called The Mad Hatter, where Woody gets a summons from the studio. He's going to get a screen test. And they just said, okay, Freddie, just animate Woody, having a joyful reaction. And it is so full of wonderful ideas and funny little walks and the way Woody jumped in the air and his expression. To me, that's an animator's delight. I mean, you look at that. It's not only the drawing, it's the patterns that he takes on the layout, the way he moves around in the space. It's so expressive, so wonderful. That to me, that's the joy of really well done animation is not only what's there, but the negative space, what surrounds the character and how he moves through, or he or she moves through the negative space. It's just a thrill when they do it right.
And so you're looking for those rarities, and
Yes.
and clearly, I know a little bit about that from the Oswald the Lucky Rabbit cartoons.
Oh yeah,
I worked with David Gerstein.
I did that book. I have a copy of your book,
and I put them all into that book.
Yes,
exactly.
Indeed.
And just so you know, by the way, a small portion of Neck and Neck was found in Japan.
Oh, how great!
Recently,
some of the drawings from that are in the ARL.
Yeah, I know. So, so you're looking for these rarities. What, is it just cartoons, or are you just kind of running the gamut of different types of animation? Because I'm obviously I know that you have some World War II stuff from Disney.
Yeah, I do, and I love early European stuff. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of 20s and 30s British films, and I have a lot of the early Zagrebs, for instance.
From was he Yugoslavian or?
Yes, that studio was in Yugoslavia.
Yeah,
Dusan Vukotic was one of their great directors, and he did some really unusual animation that it almost looks like a plant growing. Because the squash and stretch is timed so evenly. It almost has that surrealistic quality. They didn't use a lot of real snappy timing in their cartoons. It is more even, but it has a lot of appeal for me. I saw those on St. Louis television when I was a kid. I saw The Violinist, and I saw Toop Toop, and there's so many of those Zagreb cartoons I really liked, and I have prints of a lot of them now. But and I love black and white cartoons. I love the black and white Oswalds, the black and white Mickeys, the black and white Looney Tunes. If it's black and white in early 30s, I really love it. So I have a lot of those.
Why do you like them?
Well, I think because of St. Louis television. Again, the very first animation I ever saw was probably Farmer Alfalfa, the silent Aesop fables, the Aesop film fables that Paul Terry did from 1921 to 1929. And he made hundreds of those shorts. And almost all of them still survive. It's kind of a miracle. And I just grew up watching those over and over again. And they ran these great little music behind it one was called Children's Games or something. And just this real high energy, fun music that went along with them. I think that probably is what it encouraged me to get into 1920s music too, because they used it.
I was going to say though, but those cartoons were silent cartoons.
Yes, and they
right?
added music to,
so they
to run
added
them on TV.
Yeah. So when did they add the music to those?
Probably in the early 50s.
In the early 50s.
Yeah, because some of it sounds like a 50s orchestra playing for a 1920s cartoon. But it's all, to me, it's all charming and it's all nostalgic. I have a lot of prints that have those old tracks on them, the TV tracks.
How does somebody, if you were giving advice to a young person listening, how does somebody get into collecting films? Where do they go? Where do they look? Where can they find these?
Only one place. When I started collecting, long before eBay, I was going to school in Kansas City at the Art Institute there. And the first 16 millimeter print of anything I ever saw for sale was in the next mailbox over from mine. And I saw a little film list sticking out of the mailbox. So I helped myself to my neighbor's mail. And it was a company called Home Movie Wonderland, which actually was a notorious duper. They operated out of the Hollywood Hills and they literally developed their films in a bathtub.
Really?
Yeah, and they made a lot of illegal dupes of Tom and Jerry and Disney stuff. And I got a few of them. I knew they were inferior prints, but I was so happy to have any print in those days. I was very indiscriminating about it. And of course, as a kid, I collected 8 millimeter films, regular 8. And I had a little viewer and I studied those films. And I tried to imitate some of the animation in them. I often tell people probably the longest lived cartoons in the future from the film trail that they left behind will be Walter Lance's Woody Woodpecker, because he put them out through Castle Films on 8 millimeter, little 100-foot editions, 50-foot editions, sound editions, colored, multiple editions.
16
and 8 millimeter,
Yeah.
regular 8, super 8. And you see those on eBay constantly. Tons and tons of Walter Lance cartoons. And then, wow, I mean, he has ensured that his efforts will be remembered just because of the sheer volume of duplication.
And I'm imagining those are pretty inexpensive for somebody to start picking up if they wanted to.
I would say if you start with silent black and white 8 millimeter, it's still only going to cost you a few dollars a print.
Yeah.
And that'll get you started on it.
Yeah.
And then you'll study those and enjoy the animation, and then you'll want to get better. Because if you get 16, you'll be able to see the pictures better than 8 millimeter.
Sure. And as a collector, how long have you been collecting?
Since I was 9 or 10.
Okay.
I started.
And how many films do you think you have in your collection?
At one time, there were 5,000 shorts.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know how many features. I don't have as many features as I have shorts because I don't like feature films as well as I like shorts.
Sure.
But I have a lot of the early Disney features, 35 millimeter prints. And some of those are old Technicolor prints, and they really, really look nice.
What will you do with your collection when you decide, you know what, I can't keep toting this around? Will you donate it to a film library? What are you going to do with your collection?
Well, already the 77 reels I have of nitrate 35 millimeter have been donated or put on deposit with the Academy Film Library.
Oh, great.
They are very excellent stewards of the nitrate print, because every time I need to borrow them for some reason, somebody wants to copy them or I need them, in a day or so, I've got it. They're so nice, and they take such beautiful care of everything. So I think a lot of the prints, I think I'm going to donate to the Academy Film Library. Awesome. I have a lot of 16s and a lot of safety 35 millimeter prints. Now, of course, old Papa Time is taking care of us film collectors, and not in a nice way.
No, I was going to say with the
Vinegar
nitrate
Syndrome.
Yeah, the nitrate films are the has the Academy made safety dupes of those?
Well, some of, but oddly enough, Dave, the nitrate that has survived up to this time seems to be doing pretty well.
That's the black and white, the black and white stuff, right?
And color, Technicolor.
Oh, really?
It's the safety prints that are in danger because they're printed on acetate stock. Acetate stock is vulnerable to what we call vinegar syndrome.
Yeah.
Acetate turns into vinegar, and when those prints start to smell, they start to shrink, and they shrink down to nothing. You can't project them anymore.
Right.
It is a heartbreaker. I've had to throw away a lot of beautiful Technicolor prints that I thought would be with me for a long time. Well, like I say, Father Time had different ideas, and I had to throw away a lot of prints.
What is the best material to do a dupe of a nitrate or an acetate print?
Anything
polyester?
That polyester is good. Mylar is excellent. Those kind of things. The only trouble with Mylar and polyester is that they're very easily scratched.
Yeah.
So you really have to clean your gate if you're going to run Mylar or polyester. You got to be very meticulous about dust and little chunks of dirt that might get in your gate and your projector.
Yeah. I was going to say, having been involved in the restoration program at the studio in the early 2000s and worked on a lot of the Disney animation restorations, you're correct in that the negatives, the nitrate negatives, are all in pretty good condition. Mm-hmm. And the only one that I know of that was a problem was Steamboat Willie. Oh. They had some issues where they had to remove a section of the film because it was deteriorating in order to save the rest of it. And they,
of course, the Museum of Modern Art has a negative. On Steamboat Willie, and it's the complete version. Yeah. And they've done a pretty good job of taking care of that. I guess they asked Walt or, whoever it was at the studio, may we preserve Steamboat Willie in our library? We consider it to be a piece of modern art. And they let them copy it. Yeah. I have a print of theirs.
It's funny. Mm-hmm. We wound up doing a restoration on Steamboat Willie, and we wound up, because of the digital technology, mm-hmm. it allowed us to clean it all up. I mean, just pristine cleanup, take the weave out, take the flicker out of it. And you know what? When we watched it like that, it didn't feel right. And so
you missed the flicker.
So we wound up backing in a little bit of the light flicker, a little bit of the picture weave. We put a little bit back in because it made it feel of the time period.
Yes, that's very good.
I likened it to an Itchy and Scratchy cartoon from The Simpsons. When it was so perfect, I was like, this is like something you would have seen on Itchy and Scratchy.
Yeah. Of course, in those days, they didn't have electronic drive on their camera yet. It was hand cranked.
And the other thing too was they didn't have a voltage regulator for the light.
Right. So because it's inconsistent exposure, and you have a voltage that varies on their camera lights, you do get a lot of flicker. Yeah. But it's kind of charming, and it kind of works. It enforces the antique feel of Steamboat Willie.
It's the time period. It really is the time period. So we wound up backing that, some of those things back into it to a place where we all felt that it had the feel of 1928. Oh yeah. But it was still, like a beautiful print from that period.
Mm-hmm. It was a mystery at one point as what the parrot was saying to Mickey in one of the scenes where he says, I hope you, it always sounded like he was saying, I hope you feel all right, big boy, or something. But actually what he's saying is, I hope you don't feel hurt, big boy. And that's a quotation from the Barney Google strip of 1927. Wow. It was a catchphrase that Billy DeBeck used over and over and over again in Barney Google. I guess maybe Walt was a fan or Ub Irish was a fan of Barney Google. So they put that little phrase into the parrot's mouth at one point. Terrific. I have the X sheet to that scene.
Oh, wow.
And it is read out. They actually read out the track. Yeah. That says, I hope you don't feel hurt, big boy.
But so you've got all of these prints, and are you somebody who likes to screen them periodically?
I used to, Dave, many years ago. I used to go to so many parties. I used to have a portable Holmes 35 millimeter projector, and I would actually bring it to parties, and I would run 35. Sometimes my own prints, sometimes somebody else's prints.
Yeah.
I did a lot of partying and a lot of film projection, mostly 16 though, but once in a while I'd bring this incredibly heavy projector. Now I don't have my Holmes anymore, but I have a Simplex. And it's a beautiful old projector, and I just had the lamp house restored. It took more than a year to have that lamp house rebuilt to have a xenon lamp in it.
Wow.
But it's really nice now. I'm going to knock wood because I hope it'll last for a while.
And you know, you're not doing as much in the way of screenings, but there
isn't the demand, you know.
Are you working with researchers? Are people coming to you and say, "Hey, Mark,
constantly.
could I get a copy of this, or could I get a copy of that?" And are you allowing them to?
As a matter of fact, I just shipped two groups of prints out today to people who are digitizing things from the library.
Wow.
And they use them on the internet. They use them in websites. They use them. There's one guy that I know who just digitizes them for his own library.
Yeah.
And he is so meticulous. He'll take one of my prints. He'll take another print from another archive, and he'll edit them together to get as flawless a copy as he possibly can.
Yeah.
What a character he is.
And does he give you back a digital copy?
No, but he sends me links though, so I can at least see what he's doing.
Oh, okay.
And what he's doing is really remarkable. You know?
Yeah.
I have a nitrate print of the flying mouse, which probably the reason it got into collector circles is it's a little too blue. It's not quite right in the color.
Yeah.
Well, he took it upon himself to correct all the color in that print, and he did a great job. It's just because other than that, it's practically a mint print. There's no splices in it.
Yeah.
So, you know, so the collection is not totally useless. People are finding it useful for that purpose.
That's great.
I'm happy to be able to help them out, you know?
Yeah. So I guess getting back to finding these kinds of films, it's obviously becoming scarcer, you know, much more scarce.
Well, we're very reliant on eBay.
Right. And that's really where a lot of it pops up is on eBay.
But not as much as even 5 years ago. eBay is slowly, you know, getting down to 8 millimeter Woody Woodpeckers. I mean, that's about all they have anymore. Once in a while, something worthwhile pops up. The only trouble is all the collectors know. And the bids go sky high. And you better really want it.
If the inventory, I'm going to use that in air quotes, inventory of scarce films is diminishing on eBay, is there another place where they're starting to, like, a collector would say, I want to auction these off? Is there there specialty auctions that handle this type of material?
Maybe Craigslist. I don't know. I don't follow Craigslist as much as I could. I hear sometimes film pops up there, but basically what you're dealing with is a gradually diminishing supply. Vinegar Syndrome comes after it.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want to take care of the prints anymore. And there isn't the demand for showing. Like, look at the strides digital has made in screening. I just went to the TCM festival, and a friend of mine put together a group of Fleischer cartoons, which had just been restored from the original three strip negatives, the 35 millimeter negatives, and no prints involved, all DCP, just digital projection. I was absolutely floored. I mean, they look so beautiful, and they're so clear, and the colors are so good. Who needs film anymore? You know.
Well, you know, I mean, several months ago, by the time this drops, this interview, I had gone to see a screening of George Powell's Puppetoon cartoons.
Right.
So
Arnie Leibovitz.
Yeah,
I know Arnie.
Exactly. Yeah, and it was the first time I had seen them projected in a movie palace, the Westwood Village Theater.
Yes,
And
they just did that recently. Yeah,
yeah, projected up on a big screen, and they look spectacular.
Oh, they do.
Arnie had done an absolute stunning job in restoring those.
Yeah, he has.
It really has.
I'm so glad he's doing it.
And I keep telling people what a treat it is to see those kinds of films on a big screen.
Right.
The way they were made to be seen in a movie theater.
They were.
And I wish there was more screenings like that.
I had the nitrate studio print, PAL studio print of Wilbur the Lion, Technicolor print, and Marnie borrowed that. It was just a hair out of sync, so he just corrected the synchronization of the sound, and he got a really nice copy.
Very nice.
I think it's on Puppet. Is it? I don't know how many volumes there've been on.
He's got 3 volumes. He's got 3 volumes.
I think it's on volume
out.
3. Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. The new one that just came out. Yeah.
And I love how he's been putting out some of PAL's drawn animation. PAL did drawings as well as puppets. And his timing is almost exactly the same in the drawings as it is in the puppetoons. There's kind of an evenness to it, Yeah. And again, it's like watching plants grow. The puppets diminish into the ground and then they pop up again and grow into something else. He did a lot of. That's the most remarkable thing about the puppetoons was the replacement technique. He didn't use an armature like Ray Harryhausen did. For every frame, he constructed a different puppet. And
they had interchangeable parts to them, Yeah,
but they did for a walk.
Yeah, but they still made a tremendous number of puppets.
I still have not ever read a real clear explanation of just how, because PAL did animation on paper first for a lot of those movements, a lot of those cycles, how he translated what he did on paper into a 3-dimensional sculpture. How exactly he did that and kept all the proportions right and the sizes right. And oh my gosh, I don't know how he figured
and putting squash and stretch into the puppets, and the puppets were all made out of wood.
Yeah. And sometimes he would use clay.
Yeah,
but it was mostly wood.
Yeah,
and you just said the operative phrase, Dave, is squash and stretch. That's again the magic of the puppetoons. It's so much model animation, even digital animation we see today. Ignore squash and stretch. There's no rhythm. There's no fun to watching them move. They just kind of are doll-like and they move through the atmosphere, Yeah. I don't care for stuff like that. I like the liveliness and the elasticity of what PAL was able to do.
And that's what makes it animation.
Yeah.
That's why you're using the medium.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, you hit it right on the head.
Yeah. But as far as collecting goes, what kind of joy do you get out of it?
Oh, if I get something in that I've never seen before, that I think is really unusual, or has a definite animation feel to it, a good rhythm to it, I get really thrilled by it. I just recently got an Armed Forces quiz, which I guess was sprung on the serviceman, just a quiz about personal hygiene and all that stuff. And there's a little animated professor character who introduces each question. And so, my gosh, they put a lot into this. It almost looked like a Columbia cartoon. It had that kind of a feel.
I was going to say, do you know who did the animation?
Sometimes I can figure it out. Sometimes I can't. I couldn't on this particular one. But I love different animator styles. And usually I can identify certain animators, like Ed Love. I can identify his animation almost every time I see it, almost right off the bat. I'll never forget one time I was at a picnic with Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston. And I asked Frank Thomas, what about all these guys that never get talked about, like Ed Love? And Frank Thomas just made the worst face you ever seen. You could tell he was not impressed by Ed's animation. But Ed was a duck man at the Disney studio. He mostly worked on Donald Duck shorts. He animated on Sorcerer's Apprentice. When the brooms are stepping on Mickey's head, that was one of Ed's scenes.
Okay.
He did a lot of animation at Disney. They mostly relegated him to the shorts department.
And he eventually left. And didn't he set up his own operation?
First, he worked for Tex Avery at MGM, and then he worked for Walter Lantz. He did a lot of the late 40s Woodies, the best animated Woodies that Walter ever put together, were done by Ed. And then I think he got into the used car business after that for a little while. Yeah, there was no work. But then in the early 50s, the TV commercial came along.
Yeah.
And if you look at a lot of the 50s, early to mid 50s cartoons, commercials, a lot of that is Ed's animation. I learned all that from film collecting.
Wow.
Just getting little prints of commercials. And I got a lot of commercials. I saved a lot of those.
I was going to ask you about that because there was an awful lot of commercials done in the 50s and into the 60s.
So many.
That used animated. I mean, you think of the Flintstones, Fred and Barney doing Winston cigarettes, and the Disney characters were doing stuff in the 50s,
right. And cigarette advertising was, done by a lot of different companies. Like Seamus Culhane did. Why don't you pick one up and smoke it sometime? He's talking about cigars. And he animated a cigar with a woman's face and figure. And the little animated cigar says that, sort of like Mae West. So there was and beer. My God, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of beer commercials all through the mid 50s. Mr. Magoo advertised Stag beer. On TV many times. So all these extremely harmful substances kept animators working all through those years.
In the 1950s, doctors would prescribe people to start smoking to calm their nerves. So, I mean, come on.
I always said
we laugh about it now,
But there was Chesterfield or something, outstanding, and they are mild. It's always, you're smoking, but you want to filter. You want to smoke and not smoke at the same time. It's an odd way of looking at things.
Yeah, yeah. So, Mark, what looking back across your career, and what advice would you give to somebody who's starting out in the animation business?
Love it to pieces, and love will sustain you through the good times, through the bad times. I've had really fat years. I've had some very thin years, but it was the love for great cartooning and great animators and wonderful animation that just kept me going and made me aspire to want to do it. When I made my little shorts, I got as close to it as I think I've ever gotten. I got the rhythm. I wanted to do rhythm. I wanted to do musical rhythm. That was just considered too old-fashioned for most people. To pick a beat. Remember in the 30s, they picked a beat. The director picked a beat, and the animator worked to the beat. That's what I wanted to do, and nobody wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Too much work, and I guess it was too many drawings and too expensive. But I managed to do it in 2 little shorts.
But that brings up a question I got to ask you. What do you think of current animation today? Do you go and see some of the feature films that come
I see
out?
a very few.
You're a member of the Academy, aren't you?
Yes, I have the opportunity to see, but I see a lot of shorts, and I kind of, in the last couple of years, I've been kind of sorry I participated in them.
Yeah.
Digital has... I told everybody at the Academy, when digital really takes hold, the floodgates are going to open. You think we're seeing a lot of shorts now. Wait till everybody can produce a color short finished on their desktop. Just wait. Yeah. Well, a lot of them have come out, and a lot of them are really abysmal. I mean,
they're abysmal. They're abysmal because the people making them really have no training, don't understand the principles of animation, right? I mean, that's how I look at them when I go to those screenings where they show, 20 or 30 shorts at the Academy, and you're screaming uncle at some of them for them to just turn them off, right?
See, I screamed uncle once too many times, and now I've kind of lost my impetus. I don't want to do it. I used to be very much like my friend Jerry Beck. I used to just have to see everything and want to see and it's wearing. It wears you out. I don't want to wind up hating cartoons because I love them, but everything in moderation.
Yes.
It does me no good to see a ton of digital stuff with bad stories and terrible looking animation. It's very discouraging. So many cable, every once in a while I'll see a cable feature. I'll see a 20 minutes or 15 minutes of a cable digital animated feature done on the cheap to the point where there's nothing but these very detailed. They love it when they got every hair on the head of the character. They spent a lot of time on the fabric, so it looks like real cotton or rayon or silk or whatever material they're trying to imitate. You know what I mean? They spend a lot of time and a lot of money. But to me, that's just the surface. I mean, in when we were doing what I call real animation, we wouldn't care about every hair. We would do the hair as a mass and then break it up a little bit to show that it was hair. We didn't have to do every single hair and hair follicle on the head. But that is the thinking now. Art is detail, right? And digital makes that replicable, because to do that in the cell animation days would not have been practical, would not have been replicable. Nobody could have spent that much time. Maybe Dick Williams, he'd probably be the only animator that would try it. But everybody else had to deal with practicality, but now, to me, animation has changed so much, I hardly recognize it.
I was going to say, do you feel like, especially with the animated features, that they're all just blending together? That
a lot, and they turn out so many of them.
And they seem to be derivative of other things and, sort of watered down. There's no spontaneity or originality to some of this stuff.
Well, you yourself were a pioneer in digital animation. You worked on Oil Spot and Lipstick, one of the very first.
I actually did not work on that short.
Oh, I thought you did. Okay, I'm sorry.
No. I didn't work on the short, but I was at the studio when it was being done. But I was involved with some of the early efforts of digital. On Great Mouse Detective and on Oliver and Company.
Oh, yes.
Working on an old IMI 500 computer, which is an antique, So, but the point being is that, I looked at digital as those are tools for artists who know what they're doing to use. And the problem today is that you've got a lot of people who really are not artists. Some of them think they are. They call themselves animators, but they're really just moving things across the screen without having the real deep understanding of animation principles.
As Chuck Jones once said, animation is a gift word. Yeah. Animator is a gift word. You don't just call yourself an animator. Somebody else has to call you one before you're really an animator.
Yeah.
But also, the Academy used to define animation as filmmaking frame by frame. And it's no longer that. No longer. You can set up your keys like in Maya. Yeah. And you say batch render.
Yeah.
And it generates very even in betweens and renders them all.
Yeah.
For you. That's no longer filmmaking.
You're moving you're moving points around on a curve editor.
Absolutely.
To adjust the timing, but you really don't know what you're doing. Half the people are doing a trial and error, to try and get something that looks decent.
Well, I guess that's the saving grace with digital, is that you can do almost infinite trial and error because you don't have to make a film print of anything.
Yeah.
It's just displayed on your computer. If you don't like it, wipe it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Mark, I have to say, this has been a great conversation over the last 4 episodes.
We could do this forever and ever.
We could do it talk about forever and ever. But I love talking with you about your animation career and also about film collecting, which I think is very important. And I admire you for the collection you put together.
Well, thank you very much. But I wouldn't recommend anybody really start film collecting anymore. It's incredibly expensive, and also your acetate materials are eventually just going to leave you.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's very discouraging.
Yeah.
But
Well, Mark,
if you love it, that's it.
thank you so much for being on the Skull Rock podcast. And I'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you, Dave and Al. I really enjoyed it.
We're going to get over it. Yes. Just you and me. Take my hand. Kat, take my hand. Just take my hand. Okay. And let me tell you about the great Disney travel deal for this week, because the monitor got back on. Yay. You can save on rooms at select Disney resorts this fall and holiday season. It is that time of year after all. So take advantage of this deal. Now you can contact Kristen at themeparksandcruises@gmail.com to save. You can take advantage of her expertise and navigation of the Walt Disney World, Disneyland, and so many more theme parks and cruise lines, little travel portals, so you don't have to do it yourself. All right. And you can save on tons for your vacation. You can see I'm vamping because I'm trying to get everything back up and running here. But you can stay in the magic this fall and holiday season at select Disney Resort hotels. Save up to 30% on rooms for stays most nights November 24th through December 25th this year. You can enjoy savings Sunday to Thursday nights from October 6th to November 21st. What a deal. Plus, get free park hopper benefits when you take advantage of this offer and upgrade to a Walt Disney hotel room and ticket package that includes non-discounted 4-day or longer date-based theme park tickets with Park Hopper. So hop all you like and save up to 30% at all these great Disney resorts like Animal Kingdom Lodge, Boardwalk Inn, the Beach Club Villas Resort, Port Orleans. You can save up to 25% on some of the other more popular resorts like Bay Lake Tower and Disney's All-Star Sports and Coronado Springs, my personal favorite, right? So there is tons of savings to be had. Explore all the different ways you can save by contacting Kristen today at themeparksandcruises@gmail.com. But wait, there's more, because Universal Orlando has a brand new ticket deal as well, surrounding all that hype around Epic Universe. And so it's all going to be there for your taking. Halloween Horror Nights is really just a few weeks away when it comes down to it. And I love Halloween Horror Nights. That is great if you're a horror movie buff, a scare buff like myself. Of course, the new DreamWorks land is also open with Shrek and Kung Fu Panda and Trolls, all the stuff that my kids love. Absolutely. So go ahead. You can do this Florida residence exclusive deal for unlimited day ticket, providing access to Universal Studios Florida and Islands of Adventure for an unlimited number of days now through December 18th this year. It's a big deal, right? It's only like $199 plus tax. It's absolutely amazing. It won't get you into Hollywood Horror Nights because that's another separate hard ticket event, but a great deal nonetheless. Take advantage of that deal and so much more for the Universal Orlando Resort, as well as Universal Studios over there at on the left coast, or Disneyland, or the Disney Cruise Line and the new Treasure Ship, or any cruise line whatsoever. Once again, book with Kristen for get your free quote today. Save on all these great deals. Once again, themeparksandcruises@gmail.com. That's Theme Park and Cruises.
Your attention, please. Now loading on track number 1 for a trip around Walt Disney's Magic Kingdom.
Skull Rock Podcast.
All aboard.
Your Main Street to the world of Disney.
Wow, Dave, I am just, I'm exhausted from not only from the big news segments, but also from this interview. It's so good that Mark is able to come back and tell us more about his career.
Absolutely. And, he's such a terrific guy, such a nice guy. We're going to have part 4 next week, which is our 200th episode, my friends.
I can't believe
200th episode.
I forgot to mention the fact, Dave, that this past week I saw Lisa Loeb perform live.
Oh, nice.
Night. So Kristen and I went to see Lisa Loeb, and she was she is a great songwriter and singer, and found her prominence, really got her foot in the door back in the mid-90s. And she was talking to everybody about how when she got signed, she put out an album. Back then we called them cassettes. and then later CDs. And she had to say that several times to kind of clarify it because her audience was filled of different age groups. And Kristen and I basically had a front row seat for it. And so we were right there. And we just laughed, and I said, boy, I feel old, because she was talking about cassettes and CDs, and the fact that she has to explain it to a whole new generation of people that don't even know what this physical media is. When we talk about Kausler's, acetate film collection, I'm just sitting back going, man, there's some people out here who have no idea what that actual film is.
And by the way, I'm just using acetate as a general term. I mean, I think he's got some nitrate films, and again, this is like a foreign language to people.
Anyway, gang, thank you so much for tuning into the show. We appreciate it. Don't forget, we're on YouTube now, as well as all your favorite platforms. So if you've stumbled upon us, please be sure to subscribe to wherever podcasts you listen, whatever platform you listen, and even on YouTube. We appreciate that. You can also check out all of our social media as well. We're on X. We're on Facebook, of course. We're just everywhere. And of course, Instagram as well. And we would appreciate it if you follow us. You can also send us those emails, Dave@skullrockpodcast.com or Aljon@skullrockpodcast.com. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, AljonGo, and you can check out all of our exploits. And we'd appreciate a follow there as well as Dining at Disney Podcast, another podcast that I host, which goes on twice a week. Dining at Disney, wherever you find podcasts. And a big shout out to our friends at Sorcerer Radio at srsounds.com as well, because they help support our show as well as the rest of the Disney fan community. Dave.
Well, I just want to give a big shout out to our listeners all over the world, especially in Kenya and Taiwan and Australia and Canada and over in Denmark
South
and
Africa.
Germany and France. I mean, honestly, there's so much going on. And by the way, we didn't even touch on the Olympics, Aljon.
I know.
And maybe we'll talk about that next week.
Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, we're going to have to do that. But I would like people to know that you can catch my Tunes Behind the Tunes show on Sirius XM, Disney Hits, channel 133. New episode drops the first Tuesday of every month and then plays random times throughout the month. So you can catch me on Sirius XM, Disney Hits, channel 133. If you're interested in any of my books, you can get signed copies at theoldmillpress.com. And also there's free stuff at my website, davidbossert.com. So check those places out. Go out, have a fantastic week, be good to one another, and we'll see you back here again next Monday, right here on the Skull Rock Podcast. Next Monday is going to be the 200th episode.
Whoa.